G'day everyone, my name is Shane Watts from the Dirtwise Academy of Off-Road Riding Schools. Thanks for joining us here for Volume 1 in our series of DVDs that go into an in-depth analysis of all the skills you will require whilst riding off-road. In this DVD, we will be covering not only the many techniques used to conquer mud, sand and rough ground while you're riding, but we will also cover specific bike setup for these conditions, including suspension tuning. As an added bonus, we are stoked that our great mate Wally Wanker, the Weekend Warrior, has joined us for this DVD to demonstrate to us how he thinks you should ride. G'day Wally, how's it going, mate?
I'm as happy as a pig in crap to be out here.
Well, we're stoked that you come to be an integral part of the Dirtwise Academy of Off-Road Riding Schools DVD.
Boy, I'm gonna get her done.
Alright, let's do it! There are 4 fundamental skills that all off-road situations revolve around. Your ability to execute these skills and to coordinate them together essentially determines your skill level. The better you master these fundamentals will result in you successfully conquering more difficult and advanced trail situations with ease. The first fundamental is your body position and you being able to maximize the effect it has on the motorcycle when moving it from side to side and front to back. Being comfortable and skilled riding in the standing position allows you a greater range of motion on the motorcycle and thus more effect. Start off with your bike on a stand to get comfortable with extending your body from back to front. Then do the same actions while riding steady across the paddock. The second fundamental is your throttle and clutch control and coordination. This determines your ability to put the power to the ground, whether that rear tire spins or hooks up when accelerating. To practice this, we start off by doing the stop and go exercise while sitting down, then progress to doing this in the standing position. By moving from back to front, this allows us to use our body weight to counteract the forces exhibited by the motorcycle. The third fundamental is your balance and your ability to maintain and regain your balance without hesitating and stopping. To practice this, we do the slow ride exercise, where obviously we try to ride as slowly as possible without putting our foot on the ground. Looking ahead improves your balance. When you start to feel that you are losing your balance and about to fall over, counteract this by turning your handlebars in the direction you are falling and by moving your upper body weight in the opposite direction. These are the exact actions that we use down the trail to maintain balance, especially in deep, nasty straight ruts, while maximizing your speed and safety and minimizing your energy usage. The fourth fundamental is confidence. The higher your skill and comfort level on the motorcycle, the more inclined you will be to tackle the advanced situations and push your limits to a higher level. time for you to sit back and enjoy the ride as we give a comprehensive analysis of techniques you will use to conquer the more advanced obstacles and situations out on the trail. But be sure to get out and start practicing these techniques as soon as possible, because the more time and practice you give these skills, the faster you'll have them mastered. Wally's always bloody late. Let's go see if we can rustle him up and go out and have some riding today. Wally! Oi! Wake up! Wally! Come on out!
Hey, hold on there. Just give me a minute to get ready here. I just got out of the crapper. It'll just take me a few minutes if you don't mind. If you don't mind, how about you give me some privacy too there, fella?
As I lay on my pillow, thinking of you, are you happy with another? I'm so lonesome here it seems. Darling, wait until I see you, since you say, though I know that you don't love me, won't you let me be your friend? Will you ever think about me? Will you love again someday? Will you ever think, my darling, of this heart you stole away? Darling, wait until I see you, since you say it is true. Though I know that you don't love me, won't you let me be your friend?
And them daggum there fundamentals. When you say something about the why behind the what, is that what you're talking about there, Watchy? The why behind the what?
Our first advanced fundamental skill is precise wheel placement. The ability to control the exact placement of your wheels whilst out on the trail and to vary the placement of your tyres by just an inch or two has a huge effect on your speed, safety and energy use. By executing this well, you can avoid many of the nasty ruts, roots and bumps. Here's some exercises you can use to improve your wheel placement precision. Start off with being able to follow a roost mark across the paddock. As with any skill, it is best to isolate it and practice mastering it in a safe, controlled environment, progressing to a more advanced level in small increments, such as next riding along some train track sleepers, and then along the actual train tracks. Here is one great example of having precise wheel placement. Following 7 attempts at this mad hill climb, the very slippery approach still only has essentially one wheel mark in it. Grinding is our second advanced fundamental skill, and again we use it to avoid so many nasty trail obstacles and to be able to maintain control and forward motion if you or the bike get off balance. You can start off with trying this on a dirt bank or on train track sleepers, and then progress to a log or all the way up to doing it down the train tracks. It is preferable to do this skill whilst in a standing position for increased upper body movement to maintain control and balance. To control the bike, you need to adjust your throttle position and steering to keep it sliding at the appropriate angle. Too much throttle and not enough counter steering will result in sliding out. Not enough throttle and too much counter steering could end up in a trip over the hangers from a high side crash. Be careful that the train is not behind you when this happens. You also need to be precise with your wheel placement. By pushing your skill limits and getting out of your comfort zone so as to improve your skills, it is inevitable that at some stage you will crash. Our third advanced fundamental is drifting. We will go in depth with this in Volume 2, analysing the 3 key points of cornering, which are throttle position, lean angle, and body position in relationship to the principle of the 90 degrees of traction. Find a smooth location with consistent traction and start doing some varying size circles, slowly increasing your speed until the rear tyre starts breaking traction. You then just go a little faster, focusing on achieving a continual drift by adjusting the 3 key points and using counter steering to control the drift. Make sure to practice this skill in varying conditions and situations.
That was close.
In all conditions, it is important to be able to maximize your acceleration, and this is even more critical in mud and sand conditions. Like with all of our off-road skills, we need a good execution of the 4 fundamentals to achieve this. In mud and sandy conditions, your motorcycle will move around a lot more while under acceleration. Therefore, you need to be much more attentive to maneuvering your upper body weight side to side to help maintain balance. This allows you to keep the throttle on instead of hesitating with it off while trying to regain your lost balance. Selecting a higher gear usually helps with putting the power to the ground when riding in mud. Generally speaking, the faster you are going, the more the balance you will have due to the gyroscopic effect of the motion in both wheels. Plus, there will not be as much mud in the knobbies due to it being flicked off. In slippery or loose conditions, it is very important to move further to the rear of your bike so as to increase the effect your body weight has on gaining more traction at the rear tyre. If the rear tyre hooks up and you start wheeling too high, just basically leave the throttle at the same position but pull the clutch in the necessary amount to decrease the drive to the rear tyre. On uphills or when stuck on trail obstacles, it's important to be real effective at putting the power to the ground with great throttle and clutch control and coordination. Generally, it's better to use the lower portion of the power band and grunt the motor so as that the rear tyre has more chance of hooking up. From being stopped, you may need to give a quick burst of power and exaggerate your body movement to gain some initial forward motion before backing it off and hooking up. You don't want to keep that rear tyre spinning wildly, as you won't get much traction and it will be very easy for it to slide out and lose balance. You need to find the best combination between wheel spin and hooking up to achieve the maximum acceleration. In most situations, when you are stopped but still spinning, it is best not to get off the bike and push. All that you are doing is wasting energy. With no body weight on the rear tyre, you gain zero traction, which translates into heaps of wheel spin but no acceleration. In muddy and sandy conditions, it is even more imperative to keep your eyes protected and your vision clear. In these moist conditions, it is also easier for fog to form on the inside of the goggle lens. That's why a pair of these RE80 goggles are such a great investment, seeing as they come with an anti-fog film already applied. Using a double layered lens generally eliminates all chances of fogging up though. Using tear-offs helps you maintain a clear vision for a longer period of time. However, nothing compares to the use of a roll-off system for the most nasty of conditions. Another handy trick is to tape an old lens onto your helmet visor to help protect your goggle lens from getting muck on it. Placing some foam on the top of your helmet during very muddy race conditions will help immensely in stopping lots of mud accumulating there, and thus making you feel like a bobblehead. If you do need to remove your goggles, it is best to place them backwards on your helmet instead of around your chin or handlebars. Just remember that no trophy is more important than your eyesight. There's a lot less traction when going around muddy corners, so you definitely need to get as comfortable and skilled with your bike sliding around and drifting through the corner while in both the seated and standing position. Be careful while braking on flat corner entries, as there will be a greater tendency for the wheels to lock up and slide out. Going around a tight or more open corner, you will need to be continually adjusting the 3 key points of cornering that we will explain in Volume 2, so as we can maintain a smooth, consistent arc. If possible, try to find and use a bank surface to help stop your wheels from sliding out in the slop. If the corner ruts have some water in them, it is even more critical to keep your tyres at the base when you give the gas. We got ourselves some good old southern mud here. Quite a technical situation. Rutty, slippery downhill. Deep rut in the corner, immediately after it a slippery uphill as well, all that red clay. Got a really nice rut on the outside here. We're going to learn all about that in Volume 2 on how to really master them, go in depth, but we're going to briefly cover it here. Coming down the hill, you want to be a little bit more steady as we come in, both wheels in the rut, standing up for our balance. We sit down as we enter the rut right to the very front of the seat. That is what it is designed for. Inside leg up and out, getting quite heavy with all this mud, and keep those wheels pretty much at the base of the rut. Once you've leant over, hard on the gas, and as we come further around that rut, just keep applying that throttle more and more, because we need to gain that momentum to get up that hill. If we hesitate and stop, it's going to be hard to get going again. When you start encountering deeper bike swallowing ruts, you can utilise a variation of the 180 wheelie to get that front wheel to the inside of the rut to help try and miss it. Or if there's room, you could go right around the outside. Another great option is to use your precise wheel placement skill and run the front tyre up high out of the rut. By grinding sideways around the rut, you can gain heaps of extra frame rail clearance to limit your possibility of getting stuck. Doing this technique also allows those rear tyre side knobs to bite into the rut wall for better acceleration. Grinding also will give your bars more clearance from any trees on the inside of the corner. Now that we're back in the workshop here, there's some key important things we can do to the motorcycle to prepare it for those conditions we're going to be faced with out on the trail. The mud, the water, the sand, to help prevent a possible failure so as we can stay on the gas all day long. First off, we're going to check our tyre pressure. With our tyre pressure now, generally we like to have between 10 and 14 psi in normal conditions. With the mud and sand we're going to be faced with, we want to try and get a little extra traction. By dropping down between 8 and 10 psi, that's going to be more beneficial. Allows the tyre to spread out a little bit, get a wider tread pattern and hook up a lot better. Any lower than 8 psi, definitely increase your chances of getting a flat tyre, which is what we don't want. Check it out. We've got our 8 psi, so that's going to be good for today. Whilst down here, we'll look at our brakes. With the Dirt Tricks brake rotors and the superior material that they are constructed from, we don't seem to have a problem of the discs wearing out or the brake pads wearing fast in these types of conditions. So always want to try and have a good set of brake pads as well. You may even consider using sintered brake pads for these gnarly conditions we're going to be faced with. Next thing for us to do is to make sure we got the right chain tension on the motorcycle. To do that first off though, we're going to have to take the rear shock off. When the swing arm is horizontal is when the chain tension is at its tightest. With the rear shock removed, we lift it up and you see it gets tighter and tighter and gets looser again. So we find the midpoint right about there. We want a little bit of slack in that chain, especially in the mud and sand we're going to be riding in, because the mud and sand is going to come into between the chain and the sprocket and going to tighten that chain up even more. You definitely run the risk of snapping the chain or locking the engine up if you're running that chain too tight. Seen it at my dirt wire schools, that has happened before, and it's actually happened to me a couple times out on the trail. Going around a sharp left-handed corner, dragging the bike through the corner, you can hear the engine starting to load up and the chain and the sprockets grinding really hard. Now that we've covered the rear of the bike, it's time to prepare the rest of the bike. First off, we're going to do the airbox, seal it up to hopefully prevent the water entering the engine. Then we're going to do our domino grips, make sure they stick on there well. Look at our IMS foot pegs and then take the IMS fuel tank off to make sure that electrical system is sealed. And to finish off, we got the skid plate, we'll whack that on and then it's time to get out there and go fanging. The air filter on the modern motorcycle is very open, allows a lot of airflow into the engine. Not so good if we're going to be riding through a lot of water, very wet conditions. A lot of that water can get into the air filter and possibly get sucked into the engine. That's where we want to try and tape up as much of that as possible. Not the whole thing, so as to restrict airflow and cuts the engine out by starving it of air, but enough to hopefully prevent water getting into that filter. As we can see here, it pulls apart quite a way. I can stick my finger all the way into the air filter. With a little bit of duct tape, we can then seal that up and definitely prevent that water getting on in. As we can see, already done that all through the rest underneath the rear fender. Whack a little bit more on here. Covers up nicely. We're waterproofed, ready to go and submerge this thing and keep the engine running. Now it's time to apply an adequate amount of spray paint to the domino grip and to the handlebar and then slide on there quickly before it sets. You may want to use a rag on the grip for added strength. There we go, a little extra spray paint on there, slid on nicely. Now in a short amount of time, that's going to dry up and get very, very sticky and tacky. But we've got to remember now, it's time to put some tyre wire as an extra backup feature. This quality grip wire and the grip pliers is available from ktmhut.com. What we want to do first off is cut the wire to a length of 2 wraparounds. We're going to start the wire at the bottom here of the grip, wrap it around once, twice, and get back to the starting point. And from there, we apply the grip wire pliers, pull down on it, hold the little knob at the end, keep pulling it so it tightens that grip wire up and makes a good seal on there. A little bit more, finish off, and then we cut it off and bury it into the grip. On the throttle side, you don't want to do that wire up quite as tight so as not to squish the throttle tube onto the handlebars. We definitely put it on the outside here, one wrap there, another wrap in the middle, and one on the inside with 3 portions of the grip tie wired on. Definitely no chance of that grip coming off as you're going through those muddy conditions. In really wet and muddy conditions, you may consider using the elephant ears. We attach them to the handlebars over our handguards. It helps keep the mud and the water from splattering onto the grips and our hands. Keeps those fingers nice and warm and toasty. Apply them on like this. Use the straps, and as you can see from the side on here, it gives a lot of coverage from stopping water spray from hitting your grips. In muddy conditions, very easy for your foot to slide off that foot peg, unless you've got the IMS Pro Series foot peg. Nice meaty teeth on there for good grip. Lots of room through the foot peg for the mud to slide out. It's a must-have for any trail conditions out there. For those KTM owners out there who struggle to put the foot pegs on, got that nasty spring that can take an eye out very easily, we're going to show you a little technique to help get it on there. First off, let's get some eye protection. Alright, now, got the foot peg, put the spring in there, put it in position, get yourself a Phillips head screwdriver, slide it up through the bottom, through the spring, and all the way out. Now from this position here, get your pin, a little hammer, one finger on the screwdriver so it doesn't fall back out, and then we just push that foot peg back on in, tap it on down, and as long as there's contact between that screwdriver and the pin the whole time, the spring can't go flying out, and you spend an afternoon looking in the garage for it. Whack it in the rest of the way, put your washer on, put your split pin on, good to go. Now we're going to check that our electrical system is waterproofed. First off, we're going to take off our IMS fuel tank. Now don't you love the IMS fuel tank? Bigger size than the stock one. As we can see here, you can see how much fuel you have left. So always a great thing to have on a long trail ride out there. But the main thing is that added capacity for a longer distance of riding, especially in the mud and the sand. When you're on the gas more, you're going to go burn through more fuel. Having the bigger tank is going to be more beneficial, but the great thing with the IMS tank is still the same width. It's not a big old bulky tank. Extra fuel, same size, great. So we'll take off the IMS fuel tank here. Underneath we have our electrical system. Already had the spark plug cap off. Want to make sure that's screwed on tight. Got a cable tie on there to seal it so there's no water spray gets into it as you're blasting through those mud puddles. And same when you put it back on, it's on nice and tight and pushed right on down, has a good seal, no chance of shorting out. Work through the rest of your electrical connections there, make sure they're nice and tight. Every now and again, pull them apart, spray them out with some contact cleaner, get a nice good seal between them, put them back through. The cable tie deal once again, maybe a little bit of silicone as well. No matter what the conditions are, you should invest in a good quality bash plate, or skid plate is what they're also called. Called a bash plate because it tries to stop you bashing your crankcases around on rocks, tree roots, logs, in the ruts, whatever it may be. Good investment there. Also called a skid plate, so that it skids across the ground, especially in our muddy conditions when we get deep into those ruts there. Won't get caught up on the edges of the motor, and you'll carry more momentum. So good investment. Whilst riding in the mud, all this open area under the engine there may pack full of mud, unless we've got some good quality foam there to push on in, take up that space, reapply the bash plate, good to go. Get some other foam, cut it into the right sizes, whack it in around the gear lever, the rear brake lever, any of these other open areas that may accumulate a lot of mud, adding extra weight to the motorcycle that you don't want to have. Now that we've got our bike all prepped for the mud and the water, to hopefully stop that failure that may happen, it's time to go roosting. Remember now, we've got the correct tyre pressure, we got our brakes going right with those Dirt Tricks rotors and the brake pads, the right chain tension, sealed up our airbox, put our domino grips on with the glue or the spray paint, then we wired them so they won't come off. Put on our IMS Pro Series foot pegs for better grip. Checked out our electrical system, made sure there's no shorts there, then applied the skid plate with the foam in there to keep the weight down, less mud on the machine. So let's go out there, have a little fun in the mud, fang it around, and hopefully we won't turf it down on the ground. Here we have quite a long rut, weaves its way up through the trail. Now, it's preferable for us to be in a standing position to go through there. To maintain our balance, we've practiced our fundamental exercise, the slow ride. If we start to lose balance, we turn our handlebars in the direction we're falling. Those knobbies on the front tyre bite into the edge of that rut and prop you upright. By leaning to the other side as well with your upper body weight, that will help pick the bike upright, and keeping that power on, motion in the wheels creates balance, and you'll be able to rail up through here nicely. If you need to dab a foot, that's fine. You can see a bit of a long slide mark here of the foot along the ground. That's from standing up and just still skimming across there. Much better than being a wally coming through here, sitting down, both feet out. That usually means you're second guessing yourself, you're hesitating, and you're thinking about crashing. When you think about something, you usually end up doing it. So you use a lot of energy propping those legs out to skid along the ground. Won't be long before those leg muscles are totally gone on you. But by standing up, we can just cruise on through, no problem, looking towards the end of the rut to increase our balance. It's quite technical through here. One thing you want to do as it gets deeper, you want to roll your feet back on the foot pegs. Keep that foot peg in the middle of your boot, but just point your toes towards the sky. That if it catches the edge of the rut there, it's just going to slide up and over it, and it won't fling your leg off the back. If your legs fling around all over the place, very easy to put you off balance. You can see those frame rails dragging through there, so good chance your foot might catch the edge. Always remember that one. A handy hint for if you get stuck in those deep ruts, or you're dragging those foot pegs through there, or around a corner rut and it clogs up with mud, is give it a little kick with your heel as you're going down the trail, and it all flings out. Get those teeth of the foot peg all nice and clean again. It's really good with these IMS Pro Series foot pegs. They clean out very well, and it's very hard for them to actually get packed full of mud. With this straight line rut here, a lot of clearance on the sides at this point, still quite rough from those tree roots there, kicking around, not much traction, but further up there we have that sawn off stump. Hit your flywheel cover, your shift lever on that one, that will end your day real quick. What we want to try and do is, after we've practiced those precise wheel placement exercises we've seen in the advanced fundamental section, we run our wheels up on the high side here, right at the base of that trunk. A little bit of a banked surface there, so we can use it somewhat as a berm. That allows us to lean the bike over, give clearance away from that tree of those handlebars. Once we get up onto the high side there, a little bit more room to work with, not down in the hole, not as easy to lose balance. Best thing then is we can change lines and do the opposite zigzag up the rest of the trail, missing all the tree roots, missing all the bumps. That's going to be a lot faster acceleration, bike's going to be a lot more steady, and you can actually cruise through this section a lot easier, but still do it in the same time as plowing your way through the rut here and getting it all out of shape. I'm going to come on through here in a moment and do the Wally way. Unfortunately, our old mate Wally, he had a big night down the pub last night. We couldn't rustle him up out of bed this morning, so we had to leave him home, let him recover. But anyhow, I'll come on through, and you'll see as I come through here, I won't loft the front tyre. I'll just plow into these tree roots, and we'll see what the effect is on my momentum to be carrying it up the hill there with a lot of speed. Not going to be pretty, I don't think. See these tree roots? Quite deep, especially this one here, nearly up to my knee deep from the ground to the top of that tree root. Once that front tyre hits it, it's going to wash it out and it's going to lose a lot of momentum. By using increased speed and our advanced fundamental skills, we can float right over the top of those tree roots and other nasty trail obstacles. Unlike our previous ruts up the hill, the one we just rode before with the kink in it and the tree roots, this time we've got some nice long straight uphill ruts. Sure, there's some tree roots there. Same principle applies. If you're in the rut, try and loft that front wheel over. But because we're in this red clay, once again, very slippery, the big thing is we need to make sure we carry as much speed into this hill section as possible. This allows us to totally stay out of the rut by railing the outer bank, keeping control by using our grinding technique. If there is water in the ruts, some possible solutions are to either go totally around it or grind your way along the edge with the front wheel up high. This decreases the chances of you and the air filter getting drenched. It also gives the frame rails extra clearance. In the right situation, you could ride on the high ground in between the deep ruts. Usually the slower you go doing this, the more chance your wheels have of sliding off into the muck. With larger water puddles, it is preferable to wheel all the way across for the best results. However, this is dependent upon being able to perform an adequate wheelie. We'll learn the fine details of this skill in Volume 4. Use your body weight to compress the suspension at the appropriate time before wheeling. This provides better traction at the rear tyre when you apply the throttle, and also makes lofting that front wheel easier due to the rebound action of the front end. Definitely keep your feet up on the pegs for better balance and to limit the amount of splash. We will go in depth with all of our hill techniques in Volume 4. But with slippery hill climbs, it is even more essential to put the power to the ground to maximise your momentum gained and chances of getting to the top. Body position to the rear for traction, moving it side to side for balance, coordinating throttle and clutch control to help with hooking up, plus using precise wheel placements is what you need to focus on. This is a magnificent hill here. Got to carry a lot of momentum, as much speed as possible. Way down the bottom there, starts off in a nice rut with lots of tree roots. Try and get up to speed, then it zigzags up through the trail here, pops on out and straight on up the hill. About halfway up there, there's a road cut. That really hampers your ability to keep your momentum going. So you've got to get up and roll over it and then power on again. You've got to coordinate that throttle and clutch correctly, put the power on the ground as soon as possible. You go over that lip and power up the next part, because you want to gain as much momentum as possible. You see at this point here, running a little bit wide with that rear tyre. Try and use the bank surface there, just a slight bank surface, but that's what really can help you, as opposed to being further over in the middle there, more chance of those wheels sliding out.
Yeah.
Not so precise with the front tyre, went down. Let's do it again, one more time. With our downhills, we should always be standing up for increased bike control and ability to lean back to counteract the possibility of the rear tyre coming up off the ground. Try to go down the hill slower than what you could be, as opposed to faster than what you should be. When it's muddy, those wheels are going to lock up and slide out much easier, so you'll need to apply the brakes with more finesse and to their full potential. If in a rut, use your slow ride skills to maintain balance, which allows you to keep your right foot up on that rear brake. It is okay to dab a foot on the ground if necessary, especially if it's going to stop you from wiping out.
Did you get that? Oh my God, Watsy.
Even knocked my bike down. Got the edge.
You alright?
Oh yeah, just got my shin a little bit.
Looked like it.
But got the fucking front mud guard off. Suck, but that's fine, we can work without that. Go get the other bike. And work with it.
That's the Watsy I know, you freak.
See the man in the mirror screaming, justifies deeds of demons. Doesn't matter where I try to run, because I can't afford to hide. Tons the voice keeps calling, pushing face, all still falling. Doesn't matter where I try to run, because I can't afford to die.
With all acceleration bump situations, the key points are that it is much more preferable to be in that standing position. You need to grip that motorcycle with the knees to make it more stable, less chance of deflection. Lean back so as you can lighten that front tyre. Give it the gas so as that front tyre skims across the top of those bumps. If possible, try and go around them if it's a little bit smoother. On the exit of that sensational berm corner back there, we have some very aggressive acceleration bumps up this rise, capped off with a nice tree root. What we want to do as we come around that berm corner is be in the seated position to maximize our speed. We'll learn all about the techniques of that in volume 2. But with increased acceleration out there, it's going to work great for over these bumps. You have to get the wheels up over the top of them and skim up those bumps there. we want to utilize the first bump back here to help kick us up into the standing position, even if it's just a squat. Because in that standing position, we can absorb those bumps a lot better. We don't get a pounding up the butt and make your back very sore. We want to try and stay away from that. And by then, being in that standing position, we can maneuver side to side. Once again, all that balance stuff comes into play here. We want to be very precise with our front wheel, on that, using those advanced fundamental exercises we seen earlier on.
That's how I do it right there, boy.
We're going to look at this section of trail as both an uphill and a downhill and analyze it here. With the uphill section, we've got quite a nasty kicker at the bottom here with a tree root at the top of that. More tree roots, more slippery clay, another rock kicker at the top there, and then after that, a lot of chop, a lot of acceleration bumps. It's going to be very hard to keep the bike smooth and accelerating on this quite a steep uphill. As a downhill, pretty much all the same stuff applies as with the uphill. Trying to get to the side, make it smoother, better for our braking. Bike doesn't kick around as much, so if you can get up to the high side, great. Sticking it on the wall, banking off of it, missing the tree, flowing on down.
Hi, I'm Alan Stillwell of Stillwell Performance Suspension. In this portion of the DVD, we're going to talk about suspension setup and specifically 3 different topics. The first is spring rates. Spring rates are very, very important to getting your off-road bike to ride evenly and smoothly across the bumps that we encounter. When your bike comes off the showroom floor, it's sprung for a variety of riders. You may not fit into that category. If you're heavier or softer than what the manufacturers put on the bike, you're going to find that the bike could either be too stiff or too soft. If your spring rates are too soft, what you'll find is the bike will want to ride down in the stroke. It'll feel wallowy and it won't be able to climb on top of the bumps. If your spring rate is too stiff, you'll find that the bike will want to deflect as it goes down the trail and hits obstacles. Once you have the right springs selected and installed on the bike, the next thing you need to focus on is setting your sag. Setting the sag is mission critical to getting the bike to be balanced and ride right in the stroke. Setting the sag is very straightforward on the bike. You want to either use a millimeter tape measure or a sag scale. Put the bike on the stand and put the tape measure or the sag scale from the axle up to the rear fender. Zero it out and mark a spot on the fender. After you zero it out, put the rider on the bike and make sure they're in the standing position. Take the bike off the stand, of course, and check the sag by slowly pushing down on the rear seat and letting it come up. Don't bounce on it, and make sure that your rider is not sitting down, rather standing. You'll need to either consult your suspension tuner or check your sag in your manual to find out what the proper rate is based on your spring rate and based on what motorcycle and what brand you have. So now we've selected the right spring rate, we have your sag set, now it's time to go out to the trails and get your compression and your rebound adjusters set up for where you ride and how you ride. Your forks will have compression and rebound adjustments. Depending upon your model, the compression could be adjusted on the top of the fork or the bottom of the fork, vice versa for rebound. On the shock, you'll also have compression and rebound adjustments. On some modern bikes, you'll also have a high-speed compression adjustment, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. To give you an idea of this tuning range, we have a couple clips for you. The first one shows a fork with Shane going through the bumps, and it's set in a very, very soft, too soft setting. If you look closely, you can see that the fork bottoms and it hinders his ability to maintain speed through the bumps. In this next clip, you'll see that we've perfectly tuned the suspension and Shane's able to carry a lot more speed through the whoops. He's able to stay on top of the bumps, and in many cases he can double where before he was slamming into them. So now we've got our right spring rates, we've set our sag, and you've established a tuning baseline for compression and rebound. I hope this has been helpful. If you need more information, you can contact us at www.stillwellperformance.com. Keep it pinned.
Sand whoops can be a difficult obstacle to master due to their bumpy surface, loose soil, and their usually uneven rhythm. Excellent timing and skill execution, along with a high level of confidence, will help you conquer these whoop sections with more speed and safety, but with less energy usage. If there is a spot on the trail that you need to stand up, then this is it. You want to position your body towards the rear of the bike to help loft the front wheel and to counteract any abrupt rear shock rebound. Be sure to grip the motorcycle with your knees for increased stability and decreased chance of deflection. The usual goal of any whoop section is to skim the front wheel across the bumps, momentarily placing it down on the top of each one. Generally, you don't want to have the front wheel drop down to the bottom of a whoop, especially if it's steep, as you'll probably experience aggressive compression and rebound of the suspension and most likely a trip over the hangers. Sometimes though, on the right bumps, and if you time it correctly, you actually want to let the front wheel compress at the base of a bump or hump. With aggressive throttle, you can preload the suspension and jump over the next series of bumps. This can be very effective if there is an uneven rhythm or height to the upcoming bumps. However though, you should nearly always land rear wheel first and on the gas if you plan to attempt this. If the bumps are deep and wide apart, it may be best to land front wheel first on the back side of the appropriate bump with the throttle on to continue your jumping action. With a great execution of a stand-up wheelie, you can loft that front wheel over several bumps at a time to create a smoother ride. Make sure you touch down that front wheel on the top of a bump or on flat ground, otherwise you may be saying bye-bye to your bike. Here is a classic example of why we need to practice those precise wheel placement exercises. By running your wheels up high on the bank allows you to totally miss these deep bumps. With turning earlier out of these corners, I was able to go at the opposite angle to the general direction of the trail. This allowed me to easily get up on the smooth edge of the trail where others couldn't. More time was gained by accelerating down the smooth trail than was lost with doing a tighter turn. Plus, it was a lot less tiring. A lot of times you will need to incorporate a combination of these previous techniques to maximize speed and safety, but minimize energy usage through all of these whoop sections. When in doubt, especially in sand whoops, rev it out. Keep it straight. Woo! You can be faced with some real hardcore braking bumps when riding in sand, but still you should always use both brakes when trying to slow down. In these big bumps though, it's important to leave the throttle on somewhat so as the suspension works better and the bike tracks straighter as you try to skim the bumps while slowing down. Generally, the bigger the bumps, the more throttle you should leave on. If the last few bumps are real big, it may be better to actually wheelie from top to top or even jump them. Do not forget that it is always preferable to be standing and leaning back to counteract any possible endos. With these tight trees in sandy conditions, you can be almost guaranteed there's going to be the elevated breaking hump before them. All this soil originally came out of that hole back there. If you don't have 10-foot long legs, you're going to need a lot of good bike balance and control to be able to come through this section without toppling over. Really focus on keeping your bike in balance and on line with precise wheel placement. You need to be extremely quick in maneuvering your bike side to side to miss hitting the trees. If the distance between the trees is smaller than your handlebar width, aim to glance off the smaller of the two trees. When you're feeling real spunky, you could try wheeling through the gap with the bars slightly turned to gain extra clearance. You want to skim the front tyre across the upper quarter portion of the log. You need a good execution of the first type of wheelie to be able to perform the fourth type of wheelie, which we call the 180 wheelie. Able to launch the road, you need to be able to rail that previous rut without mistake. Let's look at mastering ruts now. The exact actions you perform with the stop and go fundamental exercise are what you use to successfully conquer extremely advanced and hardcore gully sections. With sand and loamy corners, the great thing is that you have plenty of traction to work with. You can really rail these corners and hook up to easily change direction if necessary to avoid the nasty bumps generally found in these loose conditions. Even on flat ground, the soft soil berms up and supports the wheels from sliding out. In a rut or berm situation, you generally lean with your bike due to the principle of the 90 degrees of traction on a banked surface. We'll really analyse this in Volume 2. The key points are to sit right to the front of the seat, have your inside leg out in front of you for support if necessary, and to apply more throttle due to having a greater lean angle from the increased traction available. More lean angle equates to more throttle and usually a greater need to use that inside leg for support. Also be sure to run your wheels at the base of the rut. Be careful that you don't lay it into the berm too hard that you burst through and crash out. With whooped out turns, you use the same general whoop technique of trying to skim the front wheel across the top of the bumps. If there are no bumps in the actual corner, you can pretty much be assured that there will be some nasty ones on entry and exit. Always try to find a smoother and faster line if possible. A lot of times all you need to do is enter or exit the corner just off the main line to achieve this. Even on whooped out trail that weaves through the trees, there is nearly always a smoother, faster line on the very edge for you to use. You always got to be very attentive to looking ahead down the trail, scanning for those smoother, faster, more energy conserving lines. Here we have a great example. This zigzag around the tree I'm leaning against is the same shape zigzag, either side, has the same clearance from the other trees, but this line here where no one has been, smooth, great traction. This one to this side, big old braking hump there, easy to get off balance, hard to put the power on, especially as you exit out of here. So don't get suckered into riding that worn line down the trail. As we can see by the clips, going to the other side of the tree on that zigzag is not only much faster, but also a lot smoother, which is great for those guys that have the tendency to sit down whilst riding. Well, there you go. We have now covered how you can conquer heaps of the advanced trail situations that you may encounter out in muddy or rough and sandy trail conditions. Having a great execution of all the fundamental skills, plus knowing when and how to apply them, is critical to success. By thinking and looking ahead and being quick with your trail analysis, you have a much better chance of reacting with the best decision. We have demonstrated a lot of these skills in open trail situations for easier viewing. In tight trails, the skill application and execution is exactly the same, except that the margins for error are much smaller. With continual practice and application of these skills, you will soon be mastering trail obstacles that you only used to be able to dream about. Now it's time to wash up that bike and get it prepped for another day of roosting. After watching this DVD, we hope that you now have a better understanding of the why behind the what, so as to fast track your learning. We look forward to meeting up with you out on those advanced level trails real soon.